Hello, I'm trying to deal with an issue where I quoted Suella Braverman in a video where she talks about the pro-Palestine mob and the hate marches, and I've been tarnished with describing these marches in the same way as a mob. There were mobs yesterday, and they were involved in skirmishes with the police, and they were right-wing mobs, thugs. For the most part, I think the march yesterday shouldn't be described as a mob. It should be described as a march, a crowd, whatever. Mob has slightly different connotations, but it's very interesting. Yesterday, a few minutes ago, I went to my local shop, and I couldn't resist picking up a copy of the Mail on Sunday. It's not a magazine. It's not a newspaper I would normally read, though I do refer to it. And I was so taken by it, I bought a copy. Look, here it is. Here it is. And on the front page, it says, Gove, jostled and abused by pro-Palestine hate mob. And yet, I was following this story last night as it broke on Twitter. And the footage on Twitter certainly doesn't look as if Gove is seriously threatened, and certainly that this is not a hate mob. And indeed, they were shouting things at him, but they kept their distance from him. And the Mail says that one MP said the attack, condemned by politicians from all sides, had a chilling effect on democracy. Others called it vile. But the Mail doesn't say at any point in all these quotations from MPs what any of those MPs are called. It doesn't name any sources. It's all anonymous. One senior Tory argued that while people have freedom to protest, they don't have the freedom to threaten other members of society. I entirely agree. But who is that senior Tory? And then there's reference to Sir David Amess, and then there's a reference to Mr. Gove's former wife. Mail on Sunday columnist Sarah Vine said the incident could easily have been worse had the police not acted so quickly. She says, Michael is fine. He remained very calm, which is typical of him. Most people would have been terrified. He said the police were amazing. Well, yeah. And I think in the video that I made about him last night, I said that he must have been alarmed, and it was probably a fairly terrifying ordeal for him, but it was his choice to walk through that area of London while there was a protest on, number one. Number two, he was indeed escorted home by the police, which was the right and proper thing to do. He could easily have taken a taxi. He could easily have found some other time to take the air. But so it was provocative on many levels, but it is not right to call that group a pro-Palestine hate mob, because there was nothing particularly in that encounter which suggests that. This is the Mail on Sunday stirring up a story well beyond the bounds of its credibility, and I think this is because it doesn't want to put on its front pages the real story, which was the hate mobs from the right wing, the EDL and so on, whether they were encouraged or not by Tommy Robinson. What we know, again, from footage, and it's important to stress this footage. It's important to stress this. The footage, which is recorded on Twitter, shows that Mr. Gove is not under any threat, though people did shout at him. Why not? He's a senior member of this appalling and dying Conservative Party of this government. He's a senior member. I would fully expect him to receive verbal comments. It would be surprising if he did not, and he should be well well aware of that, of his presence in the street, would elicit that sort of response. I don't think he was in any danger, and as I say, the police moved in to help him and to escort him to his home, which is the right and proper thing to do. And no arrests were made, so presumably this was not a hate mob. And Sarah Vine works for the newspaper anyway, so and I think she was covering the story in the newspaper, I've not yet read it, of the genuine hate mobs, the far-right hate mobs. Now, as I say, whether Tommy Robinson was instrumental in stirring up that hate mob is something that I suspect people will be poring over his Twitter feed and over his social media content over the next few days to see whether or not charges are appropriate. Certainly what we saw from Maya Tusi's feed, video feed, contemporaneous video report, is that Tommy Robinson wasn't in any way promoting violence or confrontation with the police. He was simply going to Whitehall to stand for the 2-minute silence and to watch the events at the Cenotaph on Saturday. And why not? And why not? So, I think one's got to be really careful about what one reads. One's got to be really careful about what one says. And I certainly am very conscious that I perhaps didn't clearly identify that when I was talking about the Palestinian mob, I was quoting Suella Braverman. This headline for the Mail doesn't indicate any quotation marks around that, the pro-Palestinian hate mob. It's clearly become a fact rather than a quotation by a prejudiced and rather defiant and divisive Home Secretary who should genuinely be shown the door, or at least find her own way out and onto the back benches, or indeed resign from Parliament altogether, because she doesn't seem to have what it takes to be somebody who considers the issues before making a judgment. She is somebody who clearly opens her mouth at the first opportunity of grabbing a headline, and that may be the way she intends to conduct an internal Conservative Party leadership election, but it's not the way she should be conducting her behaviour in her current job as Home Secretary. The Home Secretary is there to breed unity, to promote harmony, to promote the best way in which our society can function. And that is to support the police. I don't think there has ever been a Home Secretary who has challenged the police directly while in office, in public, in such a controversial and undermining way. There are things that the police do or don't do that someone like me could easily challenge and should. That, I think, is our job. That's the job of voicing opinion. And it's not my job, for example, to provide the facts of an event. That's the job of somebody who is there on the scene. It's my job to take those facts, I think, and provide an opinion and to think them through. And if necessary, change my mind as we go along. That's how I interpret my job. It's a job of somebody who is on the scene to report the facts and to record what's happening. That's why that footage taken by Maya Tusi is so useful. It doesn't necessarily exonerate Tommy Robinson, but it provides a benchmark against which we can judge the sort of rabble-rousing headlines that no doubt we will get in the newspapers and in the comments, and from other people like me who are providing opinion. So we then go back to the facts. We can't know all the facts, but we can look at the television footage, we can look at the video footage, we can look at the Twitter footage, and we can say, well, that doesn't look to me like a baying pro-Palestine hate mob that is surrounding Michael Gove and making some sort of threat on his life. It is not an abusive mob. It's simply a crowd that he happens to chance upon. And maybe it was foolish of him to be going out on his own on Saturday in the middle of a day when there were clearly marches going on that the government has challenged. The government has set its sort of fist against these marches, so why should it not be surprised that people who are on those marches should object to a senior member of the government? And they simply objected with words.